Hi, my name is Yogi Lowell. This presentation will be by Heather Stenberg. Her presentation is Residential Options Creating Solutions to Long-Term Care. You folks should come away with some understanding of the current and available options for families and professionals who are looking for long-term housing and care for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and the benefits of the various types of housing offered will be discussed in addition to available options. Attendees will also come away with questions to ask when looking at options and resources for further information in your area. Heather Stenberg is the Executive Director of Stevens Place in Vancouver, Washington. Stevens Place is an independent living community with an assisted living license for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Heather has a BS in exercise science, experience working in fundraising for a large nonprofit, and 13 years of operational experience in a multi-franchise, multi-state company. Heather jumped at the chance to pursue her passion with Stevens Place and hasn't looked back. Without further ado, Heather.
It got quiet really fast. And I am not used to quiet, so don't hesitate. Noises, all of the above. Good morning. I just want to say thank you for having me here. And I really want to say how incredible it's been to watch all of the families in the last few days with each other. This is a really special and supportive community, and you don't always get to see that at conferences, and so I want to say congratulations, good work. As it was mentioned, I am the Executive Director of an independent apartment community for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities in Vancouver, Washington. And as we go on throughout the presentation, you'll hear about it, and I'll interject little bits here and there, but that's not the primary focus of the presentation today, because I really want you to start thinking about what the future looks like and thinking about the little questions that you can start asking now so that when it comes time to make that big decision, you're well on your way. And then make sure that you have some resources so you know where to look for housing when that comes time. And I've been really fortunate. My favorite part of my job is working with families in researching what works best for them. And so as families come to Stevens Place and look at the options that we have, then the discussion is, if it's not right for them, I'm always with them through that, finding what is right for them, because I have a hard time letting go of families. I have a hard time letting go of kids and adults that need that support, and I have a great network of people in the United States that really provide some incredible services, and so I want to be able to share those with people as well. And if you have questions, I'm pretty informal, so don't hesitate to get up and go to the microphone and ask your question when you have it. No need to try to remember it throughout the entire presentation. So why? Why is it important to start thinking about housing? Especially so many of your families have kids who are a lot younger, and maybe that far off in the distant future isn't something you're thinking about right now. But whether you're planning in advance for the future, or you've had the realization that it's happening soon, or maybe your child is trying to make you have the realization that they want it to happen soon, whatever that may be. It is important, but all too often it's the afterthought for our loved ones. And we were just talking about this, because it's that immediate care need that comes first. And when you have so many immediate care needs every single day, that bigger picture, longer term thing just gets pushed to the wayside. So, and key factors in housing to think about really are affordability. We talked a lot about Medicaid waivers. There's Section 8 housing. There's just a number of things that can help when it comes to affordability. Accessibility. So many times you can find the right place, and there's still things that you want them to change to make it accessible for your child or your loved one. Aging caregivers and family members. The whole reason that Stevens Place came to be was because there were two parents that said, what happens when we're gone? Then what do we do? And I can imagine that every single day that is a thought that's in the back of your mind, no matter how old your child is. Availability. There are programs that I know of throughout the United States that have 15 to 20-year waiting lists. And so finding the time now to start just thinking about what is out there, looking at it, is good. Because when you get there, if we're all parents, and if you're a parent like me, you want what you want, and you're gonna get it. So now is a great time to start looking. And then discrimination, it's something we come up against every single day of our lives. And I loved listening to the stories earlier because, my gosh, if you're not pushing through all of those moments and making things happen for your child, it's incredible and inspiring, and I appreciate all the work that you do. You have a much tougher job in life, so thank you. So I'm going to kind of start with, as you're thinking about this, what are some questions to consider? And I have a couple slides. I'm going to talk a lot about the questions, and if you're bored, you can just go like this, move on. But we'll talk about some other things as well. And they're just, again, I throw them out there as things to consider. As somebody who provides care to individuals, you guys can get copies of these slides later, and I'll make sure they get, I'll email them to you, whatever you want, so don't feel like you have to take pictures or take copious notes. I see cameras. But I'm going to talk about the questions because if you don't start thinking about them now, when it comes time, it can feel really overwhelming. It feels like a lot of information that you're going to have to think about and go through. And you might have that moment where you're like, if I'd only thought of that one thing. So being that I work with a lot of families, I thought I'd throw them up here for you. So the first one, what's the level of care that your child is going to need? And it really leads you and will guide us into, as we talk about what are the available options out there, that'll kind of lead you into kind of what are those options? Are they going to need one-on-one 24-hour support, or do they function pretty well on their own throughout the day? Maybe need people checking in on them, and then at night, maybe there's some extra care that they're going to need. Will the program not only provide the supports that you need, but tailor them to your needs and desires? This is incredibly important, and I think probably the key when you're working with any program that you might potentially have a child living at is that individuality. We are all unique individuals. All of my residents are, every one of your children, and if there's a program that says, well, that's not how we do it here, then you can say, well, thank you. It was so nice meeting you, and walk away. Because if you can't tailor something to 41 or 81 or however many individuals you have living there, then that is not a fulfilled life. And I know that that's what all of us are looking for when it comes to our children. Is it important to have the 24-hour oversight? So that overnight care, there's many programs in place that have lots of care staff, and they're all there during the day, and they do these great things, and then overnight, maybe they just have, I put on here, a warm body. Maybe it's not the level of care that you want overnight, and so that's an important question to ask, and they might not actually put that out there. So digging into that, I think, is really important, and really knowing that team that's going to be working with your child. And at all times possible, does the program support independence or supported independence? So when I hire, we were talking about hiring earlier, when I hire team members, I ask them, so what does it look like when you're helping somebody do their laundry? Or what does it look like when you're helping somebody with a shower? And if their first answer doesn't start with, well, it depends on the individual and what they can do, then I just pass and say, oh, so nice meeting you, thank you. Because really, we all want our children to do as much as they possibly can on their own. And so if we have somebody who comes in and it's so much easier for them to do it for them, and so they do the laundry, they fold the laundry, they put it away, what have we done for our child in that moment? And so really asking those questions, and again, for me, that's a key one, that independence wherever possible is very important. Do you want a program that offers social opportunities and enrichment to foster relationships and social and living skills? There's many programs, again, that offer the residential option, and then there's programs that offer the programming and the activities. But are you looking for one that combines both of them? And then the other question you have to ask is, in some states, there will be no supports for those programs, and Washington would be one of those, really, just because in the United States, when somebody looks at a residential option that has housing, that also has programming and supports and all of those things, our mindset first goes back to institutions, right? And so really making sure that, number one, it's not an institution is really important. But making sure that some of those things are provided, I think, is important. For us, offering a lot of programming really allows our residents to come together. They have so many different things that they individually like to do. We offer all of them. Our residents learn new things, have fun with each other, and that's really the time where those friendships start developing. We have a day program. And we had this whole list of things, that we do every single day, and we weren't getting through them. And we had all these extra supplies at the end of the day, and I was saying, what is going on? So I pulled back and kind of watched a couple days of the day program, and it was all of these moments of social interaction, and definitely at those transitions, and it was incredible and enlightening to see that here they were, having all of this social time, which is exactly what they need, and we're pushing them on to the next activity. So we really loosened up our day program schedule. But those are things to think about, because based on how the trends move in the United States, some of those trends are moving away from also having programming, but we're kind of pulling them back. So can your child live on their own apartment? And do they need their own bathroom? Sometimes those things, it may sound trivial, or it may sound like, well, that's obvious, but when you really get down to the needs of your child, and maybe it comes down to dignity for them, maybe having their own bathroom is really something that creates an extra special place for them, a place of independence. So thinking about that. What is the current mix of residents? Is there a variety in age, in skills, in interests? Again, that provides so many more opportunities for your child, your loved one, to grow and foster things in them that maybe they didn't know. We have a resident who his two passions in life are football and the Green Bay Packers. Oh, wait, the same thing. And getting him to participate in activities that don't surround some kind of sports, or especially football, was really difficult. But, he had this peer network, and he saw them doing things and was encouraged and started doing things. And now, because there's other opportunities, because he has friends, he does them. And one of his favorite things that he does is garden club, interestingly enough. And we've made sure that there's some green and yellow zebra tomatoes growing in the garden for him. Those are the Green Bay tomatoes. And so having a variety in ages and skills and interests really creates kind of that whole person, that fulfilled life that we're looking for. Does a program support family involvement? And as I was thinking about this last night after dinner, this piece really resonated with me, especially here. Your families are so incredibly involved with each other, which is awesome, and so incredibly involved in the lives of your children and loved ones. Grandparents are here, caregivers are here, families are here. And if you go to a program where they say, okay, well, we've got this now, you can come and visit now, or you can come and visit later, but we've got this. That's something that you kind of want to ask about ahead of time. You want to have that feeling that you're going to walk in that door and everybody's going to be excited to see you, and they're going to be happy that you're there. Your input is welcome and needed, And you participate in not just visiting and being there for your loved one, but you participate in their care plan, in their goal setting, that you're participating in every step of the way, and that program wants you there. Very key. So, and as you meet and talk to different people and programs, when you start going through this, you'll figure out really fast who wants you there, and then who's just ready to move on. I know it's a ton of questions, but really, I could go on. So we'll finish these and then we'll move on from it. Does the program provide long-term housing? So the key focus for Stevens Place when it was built was not only that residents have a place to come and live as an adult and live on their own, but that they never have to move out of Stevens Place. And we all know in any population, as you get older, what happens? Your care needs escalate. You have usually more social needs. We have lots of needs that we have as we get older. And so the ability for that program to then provide for those needs is really important. At Stevens Place, we've really worked on having some money set aside so that if our residents come to a point where they have extra care needs and they can't provide for that we can help them provide for that. Because the worst thing for our community would be to have somebody move out. It doesn't just affect that person, it affects everybody, it affects the team, that's not good. So what does that look like in the program that you're looking at? And not to say that if you move your child in somewhere that's it, they're done. But but knowing that if that's an option that you want, that's something that they provide. Is there little turnover? We talked about turnover in group homes earlier. But, and I am a huge proponent of always having some turnover. It's refreshing. And there are some people who don't need to stay or maybe aren't in the right positions. But is the turnover little? And are they honest about the turnover and what it looks like and why it's there and what's going on? And I think that's huge. I mean, just being able to have those open and honest conversations is really important. But then having that standard of care that's been set and knowing that those people have been there for a long time. They know your child. They know the program. They know what's okay and what's not okay. I think that's really important. So asking those questions. Again, you guys can read people like nobody else. So I can see it, and you'll know. And then what's the staff to resident ratio, and does that fit in to the care needs of your loved one? Does the organization believe first, this is really key for Stevens Place as well, that the building itself is the home for the residents, and that it's not an office building? So at Stevens Place, we have offices throughout the building, and it looks kind of funky. You're walking through, and all of a sudden, here's an office, and then there's an office down there. But the whole focus is this is not an office building. This is not just somewhere where our residents come to live. This is their home, and we're just taking up a little bit of space in their home. And that's really the thought that all programs should have, I believe, because this, at the end of the day, that's exactly what it is. It's their home. And I really am cognizant of that when I come in on nights and weekends, which I often do, and make sure that I'm dressed appropriately. It's not nobody's at the office, so I can go in my flip-flops and my jeans, but I'm dressed appropriately. I'm dressed in the same way that our residents are required to dress, so I don't get to wear my slippers in the common areas, unfortunately. And so asking some of those questions will help you dig into that. At the end, you don't want them treating it like a business. It's a home. Are shared meals offered, and do they encourage the social opportunities and family dining experience? There is no better place to learn more about your family member for me than sitting down to a meal with them. Sometimes we learn maybe a little bit too much, but I'd rather know way too much than not enough. And the conversations that you have over family meals, the time that you get to spend together, that's what builds relationships. At Stevens Place, all of our team members are required to eat with our residents because it builds that relationship. So again, more important questions to ask. Is it important for the program to not create rules that limit the individualization or freedom of a resident? Again, it goes back to that, if you can't design a program that accommodates for people being people and people being unique, then you haven't designed anything. You've designed a process and procedure, and that doesn't fit very well into everyday life sometimes. It constantly has to be redone for process and procedure. So let's see. When you've met with them, have they done the research on Dupe 15Q? Every time I talk with a family before they come in and I know what this child has faced in life, I like to go figure out what's been going on, what does it sometimes look like, because we know it looks different every single time. But if you have talked with them and they know that you've got a duper, then the next question is, what do they know about it? And if they haven't done their research, are they really invested? And I'm putting it up here. I'm saying, this is what you want to look for, right? And you might hit most of these or some of these questions, but that's the ideal. What is their transition process for moving your child from their home into the community? I know many programs, it's an application, and then after the application's done and they've maybe read some information from the schools or read IEPs, they say, I think this will work. Okay, well, when do you want to move in? That is not successful for anybody. So the really good programs out there, and I know so many of them, including ours, really the process is we go to your home, we really take a look at what life is like. You have made so many adaptations that every single day, you don't think about it. By the time they're ready to move out, your whole life has been changed and adapted for them, and to make life easier, and things as simple as having that lamp right next to the bed, because if they get up to turn it off before they go to sleep, then they're up the rest of the night. And little things like that as a parent, as a family member, as somebody who supports your child, you're not thinking about every day. So when you go to a program and start talking about, these are the needs of my child, that lamp's not going to matter. You've had that there for 15 years, So knowing that they're coming in, that they're really taking a look at what those needs of your child are is really crucial and vital. And then is there a trial? Do I have to do the trial? Maybe that doesn't work well for my child. Are you flexible? Can I do 3 trials? We're going on vacation. Can I have my child come stay with you for 3 weeks while we're on vacation? Really knowing, again, that individualization, that it goes back to, making what it means for your family and making it work for your family. What kind of training does the team receive? So in the state of Washington, we talked about how different states are very different. In the state of Washington, there's some requirements for training. And because we have our assisted living license, every one of our team members that works regularly with our residents either has a CNA or an HCA, home care aide. So that's some training that's required because they work with a population of people that have disabilities. They were required to do some disability training. It's okay. Doesn't really get into much, but it's okay. Gets into history a little bit. Then they're required to have, over the course of a year, 12 hours, that's it, of continuing ed training. And the continuing ed training has to be approved, and so it's all, state the same thing. They could do the same thing that they did last year and get by on those 12 hours. But really, what does the program do for training? Are they talking about disabilities? Are they looking at case studies? Are they watching absolutely, I love that the film industry has really embraced people with disabilities. Have they watched Life Animated and talked about it as a team and what it means and how it shows just an incredible dedication that parents give to their children with disabilities? Have they talked about what it means when they watch Life Animated? What happens to that sibling? And so really digging in and kind of learning how they train their team is important. And I think, there's some key pieces that really go back to it in training. Are you training what's required, or are you training to what's important to your organization and the people that live there? Do you want your child to have a job or volunteer regularly if possible? And is this provided by the program? So many of us, you know what? I go to work, I come home, I feel good about what I gave, and that's how everybody feels when they go to work. Don't get me wrong, there are long days. There are days where you're like, ugh. I haven't had those since I started at Stephen's Place. But everybody should have the opportunity to have that. And what does it look like? Do all residents go to work at the same place? Are they going somewhere where they want to go and doing something they want to do? Our residents, we have residents who work 2 days a week for a half an hour with one of our team members because that is their attention span. That's about what they can take. And then we have residents who work 6 days a week. They go on their own. They're there 6 hours a day, and they love it, and they do that. But it's a vital piece of life. We really believe that at our program. And if you do, is that an important piece for you? And is that something that they're going to offer, or are you going to have to supplement? And then what care team members are important to you? With the medical needs that the dupers tend to have, I would imagine that you would definitely want a nurse in the community, that you would want people that work with them regularly, maybe to have some sort of their CNA, their HCA, or at least first aid and CPR. So thinking about those things. So exhaustive list of questions, but again, it's not really exhaustive. There's tons more. I won't go through more. But if you ever just want to talk about what those questions are, what your concerns are, don't hesitate. My information's at the end of this presentation, and I am always available. Okay, so preparing financially, I had to throw this in there because, oh my gosh, it ends up being kind of an overwhelming burden. So I kind of feel like if we throw out little bits and pieces at a time, maybe someday it won't feel like an overwhelming burden. And I said it's an entirely different presentation, because it is, and I know there were 2 presentations on it yesterday. But as you think about what you and your child want as a living option, planning the financial aspect can be pretty scary. And I kind of wanted to say there's people out there who can do it. Make sure you get the right person. There's financial planners who have special certifications in working with special needs trusts. Easy, you can look them up on a website. They'll tell you state by state who's there. There's the well-versed lawyers who've done the special needs trust. All kinds of money from your Social Security. If you're setting up ABLE accounts, if you can't set it up in your state, you can set it up in other states that have them right now, if you don't know that. State disability funding, the Medicaid waivers, et cetera. The list really goes on and on. But those are all things that could be included someday in what you need. And just as with retirement, plan early. So there's my pitch for the financial portion that ends up being scary. Current types of housing available. So now you haven't gotten through all of your questions, but we've gotten through questions. You've thought about what you're looking for. Now thinking about really where you want to be is next. And I'm guessing that most of you have heard of most of these options, so I'm only going to dig in on a couple of them. But group homes are out there, and all of these options provide different things. So knowing those questions ahead of time, thinking about what you want. Group homes, as it was mentioned earlier, there's a huge turnover in the care staff there. So if that's something that's really important to you, then looking at something else. Nursing homes and typical assisted living options, they're with people who have not experienced disabilities in their lives usually. And so we have a couple residents who have previously lived in an assisted living or a group home. And the isolation that they feel, the lack of peer network that they feel, and this isn't necessarily true for everybody, so I'm not labeling, but it's disappointing, I guess. And so when I look at what options are out there, making sure that peer network of people with disabilities, because I mean, it's a different life. It really is. And making sure that they have people that understand what they're going through and people that understand them and accept them is huge. So anyways, sorry, I get on soapboxes. I try to get off them pretty quickly. Supported or supervised living on their own, transitional programs. So not only through the school district are there transitional programs offered, but there's schools that you can send your child to learn more about independent living. There's programs that are offered for that. There's a school in the Northeast called Riverview where some people attend. There's a program in Northern California called Moving Forward Towards Independence. They're a transitional program. They also have a long-term living option. So those are out there. Farmsteads. I don't know how many of you have heard of Farmsteads. I'll touch on that briefly just so you can get an idea of what that is. Shared housing with other families, and for those that have disabilities and those that don't have disabilities, co-housing as it's called some places. Edwards Center will touch briefly on them. And then independent apartment communities, which is what Stevens Place kind of falls into classification of. And so we'll kind of dig in again to a couple of those. I think most of you have heard of group homes and assisted livings and nursing homes. Supported living, co-housing is kind of newer for some of you, I would imagine. Farmsteads, so really this is just a huge plot of land, and they have a farm or they have a ranch, and the people that live there also work on the farm or the ranch, and it can be an incredible experience for those that live there. It gives them something to do, it gives them work, it gives them lots of social activities because there's other people there and doing things, and there's some really incredible programs out there. So I mentioned Rainbow Acres. They're located in Arizona. They are, all of their residents there are called ranchers. And they're, again, a program I know that really individualizes and makes a difference in the lives of their residents. There's the Camp Hill Association. This says of North America, but they're also located across the world. And they have some pretty neat options as well. So I just wanted to point those out. Shared housing or co-housing, families and children aging together. So there's a program in Oregon called the Edwards Center, and they have a number of living options actually, as well as social and educational options. But they created in the last few years these 2 homes, and it's really incredible to see. It's a family that has a child with special needs, and they're in one part of the home, and that child gets their own room, they get their own bathroom. They also get to know that mom and dad are there and have a place where they can age in place as well. And then there's usually an apartment connected, and the apartment connected is somebody else with a disability who has, again, people checking in on them, knowing when they're getting there, coming home, just that little level of support, which is really important in many of their lives. And this is, we're seeing this more and more. The other in Washington State, again, state to state, right? In Washington State, there's a program where if a family says, we would love to have somebody live with us who has disabilities, and maybe it's a family member, sister, brother, they can receive funding for that. So look into what your state offers. And then there's independent apartment communities. So these are some pictures I've mentioned off and on Stevens Place. We're going to talk about it a little bit more. These are some pictures from Stevens Place. We, in the Pacific Northwest, those of you that have never visited, it rains a lot. But when it's not raining, there is a beautiful screened-in porch. And so this time of year, if you come to visit the Pacific Northwest this time of year, what you would say is, this is perfect, I'm gonna move here. And then in a couple months, you'd change your mind. You'd say, that's way too much rain. And anyways, so this time of year, they are out in the screen porch and they take their dinners out there and just really enjoy time. And the best part of the screened-in porch is there's no bugs. And then this is our greenhouse. So we have a horticultural therapy program, and our horticultural therapist does garden club with our residents. It's really something fun to see. Our residents have grown all kinds of food that we cook in the dining room or in the kitchen. They eat it in the dining room. They've taken their things that they've grown to the local fair and won ribbons and checks, which I can't cash because I'm too sentimental about things. So I just give them the money and frame the checks because why not? And they've really created a neat program. Beautiful. They do flowers in the summer. They cut the flowers and create their own centerpieces for the dining room. So we do some job skills in Stevens Place as well as outside of. This is one of the living rooms in our one-bedroom apartments. And then over here is, you can't really see our game area, but one of our residents is playing Jenga in our game area. More pictures of our residents, busy garden club, and then out in the community. They are between work and movies and events that are going on and going grocery shopping and checking out that noise down the street and visiting the preschool across the street and the Montessori preschool down the road. It is absolutely incredible how often our building feels so quiet because our residents are gone. So, brief history about us, and then you'll, at the end, we'll talk about why I'm really sharing how we came to be. So the Cooney Foundation, which funded Stevens Place, was created in 2006. And the Cooney Foundation funds two things. One, it funds cancer research. The family that created the foundation, the father passed away from lung cancer. And the other thing is supported housing and activities for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And what happened was they had two sons with disabilities. And when they were born, their oldest son is now 60. And so when they were born, they were told, well, you should put them in an institution. And the parents said, that's not what I want for my child, just like you guys are all saying, I have an idea of what I want for my child. They did too. And so this was always their dream. This was what they wanted for their children. They said, everything that we have, that is what I want for my child. So Stephen was one of their children with disabilities. He passed away when he was 26. And the other son is a resident at Stevens Place. He's 60 now. He has lived on his own. He was married for 25 years after his wife passed away. So I've known him for about 14 years. And when his wife passed away, I'd call him and I'd say, well, what are you doing tonight? Who are you watching the game with? He's a big sports fan as well. He is not the Green Bay Packers fan. So if you ever meet him, do not talk to him about the Green Bay Packers. Sports is like huge at Stevens Place. All of our female residents even, they've got a team. Anyway, so he had lived with his wife for 25 years. She passed away, and he had these caregivers. And I'd say, who are you watching the game with? And he'd say, well, Tim's here tonight, and he doesn't really like sports, so I'm just going to watch it on my own. And the next day I'd say, well, how was it? Well, I fell asleep in my chair, so I didn't really get to see the end of it, but I'll read about it today in the newspaper. And I'd look at those moments and I'd think, oh, how disheartening. I mean, here he is, and the joy of sports, believe me, if you don't like sports, you would love it after talking to him. The joy of sports is not lost on him, and to be able to share that with people is something that you just deserve in life. And so now he gets to live at Stevens Place and have arguments over which team is best and talk about, I mean, he's already talking about next year's basketball team, Trailblazers. If you don't know him, you probably like Golden State. Anyways, the Cooney Foundation continues to provide funding until we are full. We opened about 2 years ago, and we have soon to be our 12th resident. We have 41 apartments, but we're filling slowly and thoughtfully. When you bring somebody new into a community, oh my gosh, it creates a lot of excitement, and it creates a lot of concern. And let me tell you all of those concerns. How long do you have? Anyway, and so we try to limit how fast we move people in and make sure that it's a good fit. As I said, we really try to do our research. So the foundation's currently donated $14 million to the project, and the building itself and the land was about 11. And we've purchased land since then. We're surrounded by acres, so we can continue to do more when we're full. Anyway, and they're committed to the success of Stevens Place and a forever home for our residents. So we've really worked with them on what it looks like when we're full, what it looks like when our residents get to the point where they need more care. Wow, I've started through most of this slide, but we're located in Vancouver, Washington. When you're thinking about programs, another thing to think about. So we're right outside of Portland, Oregon. If you heard Vancouver and you said, oh, I love Vancouver, and you weren't thinking about Washington State, I understand. Vancouver, Washington's pretty awesome too, but it's not BC. Anyways, and so we're a suburb of Portland, Oregon, and because we're so close to Portland, Oregon, there are so many social activities for our residents to attend. I mentioned basketball. They love going to Trailblazers games, the Portland Pickles. They love going to the theater, all of the events that we have on the waterfront in Portland. And because of that, then we also have a great transportation program. And so our residents can access the transportation, be it if they can do the bus system by themselves. The bus system has a wonderful group of trainers who comes out and trains, and they know where they can go, and they learn. And when they feel like they're comfortable doing it on their own, then they can. And the bus trainer can come back at any time to teach new routes. But then they also have a door-to-door service in Vancouver, which is really fantastic. So our residents that can't navigate the bus system on their own, which I don't blame them because I don't think I'd be very good at it. I could get lost anywhere. In the hotel, in fact. Anyways, so those that can't navigate the bus system on their own, they get to go door to door and have those services if they need a lift for their wheelchair or for their walker, whatever it may be, that's provided. So thinking kind of about the setting of the place that you're going to potentially move your child is important. And so we have our assisted living license, again, in Washington State. In order to provide medication assistance and assistance with ADLs, we have to have that. And really the idea is we want our residents to be able to age in place. Transitions can be huge and can be very difficult, and so we don't want those to happen that often, and we limit it. If they want to live there forever, we want them there forever. And then we own land on either side of us so that we can build, once we're full, future programs. And things that we've talked about are dementia care, specifically designed for people with disabilities. We know that there's early onset dementia in our population, and so we want to make sure that we're providing something that's unique to the special needs population. We've talked about cottages that are maybe a little more independent, but can still access and utilize the services that Stevens Place offers. And then we've talked about an activity center. Our building is big, and we open it up to any program that supports people with disabilities in our community. And we've had graduations there. We had prom. Oh my gosh, prom was fantastic. We have Special Olympics cheerleading that does their practices in our gym. We have another dance program that said, can we use it too? Yes, please do. So having an activity space, because in many communities, paying for an activity space is very expensive. So we want to be able to provide that to the community. And it creates more friendships and social interactions for our residents, which is awesome. Seeing our 50 and 60-year-old men go to Special Olympics cheerleading training is especially fantastic. I love it. Oh, you never knew there could be so much excitement. And our focus is on resident independence and providing support to residents where they can't be fully independent and where that's not realistic. It's really, really crucial. Again, I know I got on a soapbox earlier about it, and I could get on it again, but when we're hiring, that is key for me. And that is the first thing that I talk about on their first day is that piece of independence. And at Stevens Place, we are, our rent is based on apartment size, and it is inclusive of the apartment itself with a bathroom and a kitchen area. We provide 3 meals and 2 snacks every day, including our residents who go to work. We make sure that they have to-go meals. In our kitchen, we offer right now gluten-free, dairy-free, and diabetic diets. And you can imagine with all of the potlucks that happen at work and with going to work, if a resident were in charge of doing their own thing whenever they wanted, there might be times where that doesn't work out very well. They have the right to make that choice. And sometimes, we all sometimes don't make the best choices about food. But we want to make sure that there's the option to have the food that they know and trust and love. They love. Our food is good. Another reason why I make our team eat there. Medical care, so we have a nurse, an RN, who's on site. In addition to our team that works with our residents on everything from budgeting to what activities do you want to do today, to ADLs, to medication assistance. They all have their CNA or their HCA. Let's see, appointment coordination. I'm not even really paying attention here, so I have to make sure I touch on these things. Social, educational, and life-enriching activities every single day. Twice a week, we have a day program as well. So usually on our day program days at about 3:30, 4 o'clock, our residents are like, I'm done. I've had so much to do today and so many extra people in my world. I'm going to go to my apartment. I'll see you at dinner. We turn on a movie usually at that time, and it's usually Disney. I love Disney. Job skills training, placement, coaching. Yes. I can repeat it too, if you want to.
With the RN on staff, is the RN also providing like basic medical care in case of accidents, like an urgent care type of thing?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
not just, okay.
Yeah, so actually how that works is because our RN can't be there 24 hours a day, we have her there about 30 hours a week. She's on call 24/7. Urgent care, we take our residents to urgent care because it's 2 things. One, our goal really is that our residents are in the community as much as you and I would be. So haircuts, urgent care, library, things like that, we really try to get them out. And even in urgent care, they're going to experience some of that. But if there's something that our nurse can do there, wound care or just assess the resident and say, you know what, I think we're okay right now. Let's watch them for the next 4 hours. Maybe they've had the flu. Let's make sure we get liquids in them. Let's, X, Y, and Z. Our nurse does do that. And then she's busy doing assessments with our residents on a regular basis. There's no mom or dad at home for them cutting their fingernails or their toenails. And sometimes that can be a scary thing. And yes, so we do all of that. And we make sure that, that wound that they have on their foot isn't getting worse because of the shoes that they're wearing. So she's really involved in their lives, and they look to her, for guidance on things. Michael, who is the family member who lives with us, he's 60, he'll say, I know we're going to a game and it's a special occasion, so I should be able to eat whatever I want. But I was told by the nurse that I can have popcorn and 2 hot dogs without the bun. And And that means something. When she says, here's what you can have, it means something, and they do that. So it's a fantastic position to have for that reason as well. Did I answer? Okay. Goal setting and support for financial, health, vocational, social, other goals. We really work with our residents a lot on that. And we touch base and talk about, okay, so you set the goal that you wanted to run a 5K and you haven't done any training for that. Are we still on that goal? How can we help you support that goal? Let's at least make it to our fitness classes and go from there. Transportation court. Yes?
So I'm just curious about, most of us or a lot of us have children that are going to need one-on-one care.
Yep.
They're not going to be able to be in a situation by themselves
Yes.
to be safe. And epilepsy in my case. And so I'm wondering, do you guys provide that? How does that work to have somebody one-on-one in a situation?
Yeah, so our program is not suited for one-on-one, which is why I wanted to touch on a lot of other programs and make sure that we'll, I think in 2 slides or next slide, we'll talk about some resources for finding places. And if you are close to there, call me and we can work together on that too. But so our program, as far as epilepsy, we have residents who regularly get seizures. We work with our doctors. We know what to look for. They know how to tell us what's going on as well. But 24 hours a day, one-on-one care is not something that we provide. It creates a different dynamic in our community. And to be honest with you, I think what would happen is a number of our residents would say, can I get that? So, and we've had a few residents or people come to us who would be great residents, but because of that one-on-one care, it just doesn't fit our model. There are models out there, though, and that provide the actual care staff that it's really neat to see. So we can talk about that and support the epilepsy. I mean, it's funny, somebody mentioned earlier, I think that was the one thing that scared the care staff the most. And I think at first it is kind of scary, but once you start digging in, once you get to know the people involved in it, none of it's scary because it's all about being there to support them. So, and there are some great programs. The ARC has a new program, the ARC of Jacksonville, in Florida. They created a new community for 100+ people, and they've got 24-hour, depending on needs. So there's programs out there. And so, talking about resources for finding other programs, here's just a few websites that you can go to. And some of them you can dig down and say, I want independent housing, I want one-on-one, I want a transitional program. So there's specialneedsprograms.org, autismhousingnetwork.org. It's not just for people on the spectrum. There are a lot of great programs that are on their website that are not limited to autism. Autism Speaks, same thing. You can really narrow down, I'm looking for a day program, I'm looking for supported housing, whatever it may be. IndependentApartmentCommunities.com, if you want to have something like Stevens Place or similar, there's a few listed there. And I mentioned that website for another reason, because you guys all have each other. And one thing, if I know, in this world is that there are not enough options for living and for supported living. And each person is individual and deserves to have something that really supports their needs. Being that you all have each other, creating something of your own would be absolutely incredible. And so looking to each other to say, hey, we're getting there. Have you thought of? Would you want to? And knowing that there's programs out there that could help provide the funding for that, and I could help you research that. I keep throwing up my arm to help because I just think that there needs to be more living options out there. And even though we're not full, we're not one size fits all. And so there needs to be other things out there. utilizing the resources that you have in this amazing, supportive, incredible community. I think you couldn't do more for yourselves than to create something as a community. So I throw that out there because I know that you guys are so supportive of each other. There's, I'm sure, people that say, I want to do it, let's get started. And the Independent Apartment Communities website has a lot of really great how to get started programs that are willing to say, here's the pitfalls to look for. If you're going to be a nonprofit, here's the type of 501c3 that you want to be. If you're going to get licensed, here's the things that you need to think about in licensing. And so as I look at all of you, that's I think one of the key pieces. And so I wanted to make sure that I didn't leave today without saying it. And putting that bug in your ear, and maybe someday you'll have the Duke 15Q house located in who knows where, and I'll be so excited to come visit it. And again, this is my contact information. Don't hesitate. You can call, you can email, you can text. This is my cell number, and I will answer any question that I possibly can. I'm an open book. And, I really believe in people having the place that they want to live for the rest of their lives and helping make that happen where I can. So, questions? Yes?
Regarding funding, there's a lot of concern that Medicaid is in danger and all this stuff. Are there any models that you're familiar with or any examples you're familiar with? I can think of a couple that are not dependent on either pay out of pocket or use government funding. Are there any models that are self-sustaining where you could put your child and it's not a question of your funds running out or Medicare collapsing and then you're in trouble?
So I don't know of one where you came in and you wouldn't have to pay anything. But I do know of some that are trying to combine different kinds of funding. I know a few programs where they are supported by foundations that actually provide a stipend and decrease the rent by a certain amount because X, Y, and Z. And programs where I see it in less supportive programs where, like Section 8 housing, you could utilize some Section 8 housing, but then also have some caregiving. I'm going to be honest, the government funding thing is a very scary thing right now. And we all need to be on the phones and calling our legislators and talking to them about it because it's really important that nobody loses that funding. I think when you look at where you want to have something like this, or when you look at where you want your child to live, looking at what the state provides is huge. And in California, the regional centers that are located here do incredibly supportive things. I know a program very similar to ours in California where I think 85% of the residents that live there, 80% of their funding comes from the regional center. And it was that one parent who stood up and said, hey, this is how I want to use those funds, and I should be able to do it. And so in the state of California, if the regional centers lose their funding, then businesses lose their funding, and there's a lot of things that are dependent on each other. So even if some things change nationally, in California, there's still a lot of supports that could be there. So I say look at your state, look at what's out there, and then don't be afraid. Please don't be afraid to push. And I know your families are not. You've had to push a lot in your life. But as somebody said earlier, don't take no for an answer. Any other questions? Okay, well, between me and lunch is nothing right now, so go have lunch and enjoy.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.